Hi there, I'm Dave Householder, and I am blessed to be your Bible teacher. Today we are going to look at First Peter 3. And I just need to say before we start, I know that a lot of you are suffering or know people who are suffering, either through this whole COVID thing that they've actually been infected, perhaps even died, and perhaps you've got elderly relatives that you can't visit, and that's just a real challenge. And your life has been impinged. A lot of you aren't making vacations, aren't making trips, and aren't doing the normal things you do in the summer. And many of you have lost your means of income. A couple of our pastors have had their jobs dry up. It had nothing to do with them, but a couple of pastors at our church have had their vocational finances just sort of disappear on them. All of us here who are pastors at the Well are multi-vocational, and that's just a really hard thing. So there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and you think, well, if we're stuck at home, we'll watch TV, but the news is really challenging out there. And there's a lot of snarkiness, and it's hard even to go online because people are going to be shaming each other for not agreeing with them on every little thing, even though none of us really understand fully what is going on right now. And so this is 2020 for a lot of you, not all of you, but 2020 for a lot of people has been a year of suffering. And First Peter 3 talks about suffering. It talks about when we suffer for the name of Christ, for our faith. And it also talks about Jesus suffering. And it is a great mystery. If Jesus takes all of our suffering with him on the cross and dies for us, and yet we still participate in suffering, it doesn't relieve that from our lives, from the path of our lives and the broken glass we have to walk on. It's just we don't live in a perfect world. And this is one of those years where we're reminded of that. And the chapter, First Peter 3, ends very mysteriously, and it's been translated lots of different ways. And I'm going to read from the Passion Translation, which was translated by Brian Simmons, and just did a really beautiful job on it, and really probably pays more attention to the original languages than any translation I've seen. Kind of up there with Martin Luther's translation from the 1500s, where he also did the same kind of thing. But given all that suffering, I want you just rather than try to figure out what I'm saying, just sort of receive the mystery of the good news of Christ's victory. And this starts in verse 18. Christ suffered and died for sins once and for all, the innocent for the guilty, to bring you near to God by his body being put to death and by being raised to life in the Spirit. He went into the spiritual realm and made a proclamation to the spirits in prison because of their disobedience of long ago. For during the time of Noah, God patiently waited while the ark was being prepared, but only a few were brought safely through the floodwaters, a total of 8 souls. This was a prophetic picture of the immersion that now saves you, not a bathing of the physical body, but rather the response of a good conscience before God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is now in heaven at the place of supreme authority next to God. The very powers of heaven, including every angel and authority, now yield in submission to him. And rather than trying to figure out intellectually what all that means, just hearing the good news as Peter understands it of the victory of Jesus over all of these things. And what we have to hold to is that creation and the God who brought us here ultimately is benevolent in intention, and that all of those intentions will be made real at some point, and all suffering will end, and every tear will be wiped from our eyes, all poverty will be erased, and death itself will be beaten through the resurrection of Jesus and us believing in that. And we can do two things when we are in a difficult time of suffering. We can either curse God and get frustrated, or we can trust God to make it better. And it says in here that Jesus died to bring us closer to God so that we can lean into his protection, lean into his promises. And that's the choice that I'm willing to make, and I know that you are too. So let's both lean in together to the promises of God when there's evidence and when there's no evidence, because trusting and having faith that this too will pass. Nevertheless, we will trust the promises of God. That's the good news for today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.